Hi guys, welcome to season 1, episode 8 with a wonderful guest for you. We have the reigning, newly queened Ms. Great Britain classic, the lovely Gina Broadhurst. How are you?
Hi, Matt. I'm really excited to talk to you today. This is very exciting.
This will probably, as with the other queens, be the longest conversation that we've actually had, which is actually part and parcel of why I want to do the podcast, or why I am doing the podcast, is because with all the arrangements and all the bits and pieces that you guys do, we don't actually have really that much time to have an extended conversation about you, about all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I know Saffron picks up a lot of that and talks to you about what you want to do with your reign, but I actually don't get that much chance to actually sit down and chat to you guys. So this is awesome. This is awesome. So I'm going to start with who are you in your family, your career, because you're one of the queens that actually hasn't really got a pageant history other than taking the main title this year. So yeah, talk to me about your background, your family, career, all that kind of cool stuff.
So I'm a mum of two. I have a daughter who is 11 called Genevieve, and I have a son who's 10 called Sterling. And we live with my husband Simon in Surrey. Simon and I run a business together, which, working with your partner, it's
Mm-hmm.
great. It comes with some challenges. There's definitely a knack to working with your partner, which I'm sure you'll be aware of.
Yep, fully.
um, we run a company that sells shutters. It's not a glamorous thing at all that I do. I talk a lot about interior design and I can spin it in a glamorous way, but it really isn't. We measure windows and we sell bits of wood. There's not much glamour in there. There's definitely no need for crowns when I go out to meet customers. But that isn't really my career. So I've ended up there, but that wasn't really by design.
Mm-hmm.
My background prior to that for decades was media sales. So I've worked for lots of different media owners, companies like Capital Radio and Channel 4 and brands that, viewers to the podcast would know, and sold TV and radio and cinema and digital and loads of different things. So that's kind of more my corporate career.
Okay, and what did you specifically do for those companies? What was your day to day like?
So when I was a lot younger, I got a job in sales. It was one of those sort of ubiquitous jobs that if you didn't really know what you wanted to do, you got a job in sales, it's how you got on. And I sold some really boring stuff. I have sold toilets before and urinals, I might add. I've sold photocopiers, I've sold IT training, all really not very super exciting stuff. But I got quite good at sales. So when I realized that I was a salesperson and I enjoyed it and I skilled up quite a lot, I thought, right, I want to sell something that I can be really proud of, passionate about, really get into my career sales. And I applied for a job working up in Manchester. Bear in mind, I lived in London at this time, for a radio station. I saw it in the Media Guardian supplement. That was where you looked for jobs in media, in the 90s. And I applied for this job and I fought tooth and nail to get my first job in radio, which was then sponsorship and promotions. So what was that? All the silly competitions you hear on the radio. So if you're listening to The Breakfast Show on any radio station and they're giving away a holiday or a car or, quite frankly, a TV, anything, somebody's job is to sell that to the brand who provides the prize. They pay for the media exposure and then you make up the silly competition.
Mm-hmm.
That was basically my job, to make up ridiculous competitions and sell them to people. And also to find sponsors for the programs. So in the way that you would have a breakfast show sponsor, or the traffic and travel is always sponsored on radio stations, and all the events, you'd have a partner for a concert or a music event. That was what I basically did. So I started out working with smaller brands because I worked on a regional radio station in Manchester. And then when I'd sussed out what radio was all about, I ramped it up a bit and I applied to work at Capital Radio. And I kind of just doorstepped them and was a bit ballsy and just said, I only want to work for you. I want to come back to London and you're the best. And this was the days of, this is showing my age here now, Chris Tarrant on The Breakfast Show, Neil Fox on Drive Time.
Mhm.
It was the biggest radio station. It was the crown jewels, you know, it was one that everyone wanted to work for. And I just blagged them into giving me an interview, really. And I managed to find, you know, get a job there. So I spent years in commercial radio, bouncing around, having loads and loads of fun. And then I moved into TV. So I did a very similar role for the Discovery Channel, but working pan-European. So I sold across 27 countries in 16 languages.
Cool.
And I definitely don't speak 16 languages. And when you're creating content for a brand, so all the clients that came out of the Far East would do deals across Europe and Middle East, Turkey, MEAT as it was called. And then I would deliver those deals for them. So it'd be content coming out of Singapore, let's say, for Singapore Airlines. And I'd have to sell it into Italy, Germany, France. And so you'd have to reversion the content into Italian, French, German, Turkish.
Mhm.
And then you'd have to come up with an idea that culturally, does that work in Turkey? Well, if it works in Turkey, does it work in Italy? Because they're quite different cultures. And it was a really complicated job. So I loved working in TV, but that was tricky.
So was that more of a branding piece, or was, because obviously I suppose branding and culture kind of all go together. So was that what was going on then? And had you merged from what you were doing in radio when you went into TV? Was that a completely different role?
It was like radio on steroids. It was a very sharp learning curve. So I didn't have a degree. I didn't go to uni. I didn't even finish my A-levels. I had the capacity to get really great grades, but I couldn't be bothered, in all honesty. In hindsight, 47, I can say that, couldn't be bothered. And I was very wild as a young lady, and I just wanted to have fun, and so I did. So consequently, I didn't have a marketing degree, let's say, that a lot of my counterparts did have. And so my learning curve was very steep. You know, there were people sitting in the room way more qualified than me on paper, but I had years of experience. So it's that trade-off, university of life versus university, which is better. And, you know, 50% of the viewers will think, we'll definitely get the marketing degree. And I can see why, because I have big holes in my knowledge. And then 50% will say, but you had 8 years experience, you know, get smarts on the job. It's a big
today it's very different as well. Is like most employers now are much more to the tune of the experience versus what you're learning, because obviously education system has changed. Things that were relevant now necessarily aren't, even when you're starting a course to finishing a course. So you know, it was almost like you were the early version of a I suppose an online influencer, having to influence TV stations to be able to buy your stuff.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it was amazing, because I feel very privileged to have worked in that industry for decades, because I worked with a patch of media agencies and a patch of creative agencies. So every brand will have somebody that buys their ads for them, a media agency, and someone that makes their ads for them, a creative agency. They'll probably all have a PR agency as well. There's so many stakeholders that work on, let's pick a brand that I worked on for years, Wrigley's, for example. You know, Wrigley's have a huge team of people that work behind the scenes to produce that sponsorship that you see when you watch Hollyoaks. That's me showing how old I am. Or Toyota, who always sponsored T4 back in the day. You know, we worked with so many different people, and they were all the best, super smart in their roles. So it was like a room full of giants when you went into the room. I always felt hugely insignificant. If you ever want to challenge your imposter syndrome, that's a brilliant way to do it, because you've got to stand up and present to these people and be an authority in your field, feeling like you're definitely not the smartest woman in the room. But you've got to just front it out. You know, I learned a lot about growth mindset and resilience and putting on the right mental attitude from those years in that career, I think.
So really, I suppose with that, you knowing you went through a pageant boot camp without even having anything to do with pageants, really, because essentially what you described there is not obviously it's not as aggressive, or, you know, because that is a savage industry. That's step on throats to get places kind of industry, where obviously pageants are not. But, you know, you dial that down, and that's exactly what's expected of you when you're coming into, say, Miss Great Britain or any other pageant, is you're bringing the best version of yourself, even if inside you maybe just don't feel like you are the best version at that point. You still put it out there front center, and be willing to, you know, let's call it what it is, be judged on stage, and in interviewing for your attitude. So you just went through a pageant boot camp early doors without even knowing about it.
Yeah, I think a lot of what has happened to me on my journey through life, absolutely. When I got to the point of being a few weeks out of Miss Great Britain, I did a bit of soul searching, because I was really focused on interview and on stage question. And I was really focused on what might I be asked? What would my response be? You know, all the mental gymnastics. Why am I here? What does it mean? And I just thought, in a very bizarre way, I am really well trained for this, because I've experienced so many scenarios that I'm drawing on, that are shaping me, that are really appropriate,
Mm.
not by design, you know, a happy accident, I guess.
Yeah, and working, I suppose, in the role that you did, really, you can only control the controllables. So working on the controllables that you can control within, say, a pageant competition, you know, that's all. The rest is kind of down to the night and the unexpected, and what will be sort of thing. But you often find that the girls that do focus on the controllables are the ones that generally, they do come out on top, because that's where their focus goes.
Yeah, I've been putting out quite a lot of kind of quotes and memes on my Instagram page, all that are pertinent to my campaign, which is called Live for Now, which is predominantly about self-confidence and female, banishing imposter syndrome, let's say. And that what is inside your control and what is outside your control is one of the things that I posted a couple of months back, because it is so important to acknowledge that if you can't influence something, don't get stressed about it. There's
Yeah,
no point. Wasted energy.
yeah,
And I
absolutely.
say that to my children all the time. But can you control that? Because if you can't, don't tie yourself up in knots about it. There's no point.
Yeah, 100%. That's my mindset as well, for sure. We're going to circle back to the Live for Now stuff, because it's quite a nice segue into, actually, you know, how you became involved in the pageant world. Because, like, as you said, you know, your media background, your shutters business. How do we connect the dots together with how you ended up at Miss Great Britain?
So, um, so there's a few things going on there. So, I left corporate world in 2018, and I left corporate world because I had two very young children. I had two under two. They were a little bit older than that, but they were very close together in age. I think one had started primary school and one was at nursery, let's say, around that age. And I was leaving before they woke up, and I would get home about half an hour before they went to bed. And I had a nanny. They weren't really getting the best of mummy. Mummy was all over the shop doing. By then I was the head of sales and advertising for View Cinemas, working across 87 cinemas across the UK. So again, you know, busy. So I came out of that so that I could focus on the children, and said, "Oh, I'll help you with the business, Simon, for a little bit. I'll help you boost it up a bit. I'll, you know, do a marketing review for you, a bit of social media, and then I'll go off and get another job." And 7 years later, or however many years later, I'm still working in the business. And so lockdown hit 2 years later. We're bobbling along. By then, we've got two staff. We're a limited company. So we're shut. We can't furlough ourselves, because then we'd have to shut our business. So we can't take an income. We have no other income. Both of us work in this company. And we couldn't get self-employment income from the government schemes, because we're not self-employed, we're employed by our limited company. Computer said no. We just fell into a great big gap. And when I realized this, I started to panic, because we've got two kids, a mortgage, you know, And I started looking in social media. You know, there must be other people in this gap. What are we going to do? And very quickly, I founded a lobbying campaign. Again, a happy accident. Wasn't a plan to be a political lobbyist, but that's where I ended up. And it just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And we ended up with about 20,000 followers, because there were a lot. There were like 3.5 million people who were in the same boat as me, basically. And this thing just grew and became enormous. And I ended up doing interviews on, you know, the Channel 4 News and Sky News and ITV, and being quoted in the FT and like insane stuff. And at that time, I came across the former director for Miss Great Britain, a lady called Kate. Now, she was in the same boat as me. Miss Great Britain wasn't operating, I don't think, because of lockdown. But she couldn't furlough herself, and she had no income, and her husband was also in the same boat. So she was a double whammy like me. So we knew each other then, and we talked about, oh, you own Miss Great Britain, what's that? You know, there was an exchange about it, but it just wasn't relevant to me, because at that point I don't think classic existed, and I was too old for Miss Great Britain. And so it was kind of a chat, you know, nice chat point, but that was it really. And then it came back into my life this year, 2023, when I stumbled across Kirsty Fletcher. So I'm on Instagram all the time promoting my business. And the way the algorithm works, as I'm sure you know, when you niche down into who it is that you want to target, you tend to come across similar businesses. So my business is very much Surrey women of a certain profile. Well, that isn't obviously who Kirsty's targeting.
Well, the
And
thing
so
is, it's got like Surrey's got a great pedigree for for Ms. and Ms. candidates, haven't they? Quite clear.
so we just kept crashing into each other, so to speak. You know, I kept seeing her ads, and she probably kept seeing mine. So I just made a joke with her that I was too old, and that's when she said, "No, I've won, and this is classic, and the rest is history." So it's funny how life serves you the opportunity once, and if you don't, you know, Miss Great Britain popped up to me but wasn't relevant, so it popped up again just to remind me that it was there, by which point clearly there was a classic category, and away we went.
Well, that's interesting, because this when I think back, the same thing happened to me for one of my businesses. I saw it in glancing, and it was only in hindsight that I recognized what it was when I was already in it. So it was, yeah, it was all a bit strange. It's weird how, you know, you have the universe, whatever you want to call it, just deal you some cards that nudge you in a certain direction. It's all very strange. So why though? Why did you want to come to Miss Great Britain? What was the catalyst that made you go, okay, so now I understand that there's a place for me, or now I understand that what this is about, it serves me. How did you arrive with that one?
So I've been quite open throughout my campaigning that menopause was not kind to me. I have not gone through the menopause, but perimenopause, which is this dastardly thing which you can't ever quite put your finger on it. You don't really know if you're in it or not. Everybody has different symptoms. It goes on for years. It's a right bind, to be honest, perimenopause. But anyway, I've been struggling with that for years, since my early 40s. And I've been pushed around by the NHS for a variety of reasons that I won't bore you with. We'll go very top level. But I was not getting what I needed. And it got to the point where they said to me, you can't have HRT because you have a blood condition. So it's just not available to you. Well, that was actually wrong. But I was told that for years and years and years, until they discovered that they were wrong. And so they just told me to have a hysterectomy, just casually, you know, just have a hysterectomy, that'll solve it all. And I said, well, but biologically, what happens to you if you have a hysterectomy? And they said, well, you
You're
go hard.
thrown into menopause.
You go hard into the menopause. And I said, okay, and what if that's really awful for me? What would you do? And they said, well, we'd give you HRT. And I went, right. So back to the beginning, I can't have that. So that's not that appealing. You know, it was like a weird dream that I was stuck in for years. And then eventually, at the start of 2023, because all through lockdown, gynae care was all Zoom calls like this, because that was all they could do. I just got a Zoom call with a different consultant, and for the first time in about 5 years, it was a woman. And she just read all my notes and said, but you've just been told complete rubbish for 5 years. You can have HRT, but you can only have one type. This is it. I'll prescribe it now. And I was like, what? You know, like lightning bolt moment. And that was 2 months before I came across Kirsty.
Right.
So that period of time was transformative for me. I went from being, I mean, I don't think suicidal is the right word at all, but emotionally, absolutely all over the shop. 1 minute high as a kite, next minute, you know, a crying jelly on the floor, and anywhere in between, to feeling actually quite good again, you know, bit back to my former self. And I just thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? So I asked 3 people, and I said to Kirsty, I'll ask 3 people, my closest 3 people, and if they say yes, I will do it, and if they say no, I'm out. So I asked my mum, my sister, my husband. They all said do it. I was like, oh, I've made a commitment now. I shouldn't have said that. I've got to do it. I've got to put my money where my mouth is. So I did it.
That's interesting, because I sort of touching back on the menopause thing, is that a lot of my own clients are menopausal women, so I kind of understand it a lot more perhaps than most men, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe the most females, because it's funny chatting to them and them not knowing. And just as an aside, you know, I'm and for people perhaps listening to this, is that it is really, really worth you paying for your own blood test, just a blood test to start with, to find out where your levels are. Because you're right in what you're saying. The NHS, as great as it is, they're going to give you a patch, and that patch is going to deliver a generic approach to something that is so bespoke and individual. If your testosterone is through the floor, and that's the key thing that's going to, you know, bring you back into feeling normal and what have you, then that's what has to happen, versus just we're going to give you a blend of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and hope that all this stuff goes away.
Yeah.
And it's just an aside, I suppose, from a guy who's seen how many challenges women have had as a result of menopause through doing what I do. Just by going and getting a good quality blood panel analysis, and usually you can get them for under 200 quid now, so you can see exactly where you're at. And then addressing that individual hormone deficiency or efficiency, depending on what it is, will absolutely change life. And I've seen it when I've recommended it to my clients. They've gone and then done it, and then taken the findings to the GP or the gynae specialist and gone, well, actually, you're telling me this, and this is the panel that's showing right now in my body, and it shows me that I have no testosterone, hardly any in my body, or my estrogen is way high, because everyone just assumes it's an estrogen deficiency, or it's something, or this or that. It's not. There's so many more hormones at play. And I get quite passionate about it, because I see the change in the women when they just, you know, either nudge their testosterone up a bit, and bang, they're now feeling so much better. Their body composition is changing, you know, they're sleeping better, all this kind of stuff. And then all that just makes life a damn sight easier, not only for them, but for me who's coaching them, to be able to get them on the right path for what they're doing. So I'm really pleased that you're using Miss Great Britain as your platform to educate people on that. I just wanted to put that across from my point of view.
Thank you. There are 13 million women going through menopause right now at this moment in the UK. So if people think menopause isn't their problem, that I would challenge anyone, because if it isn't you or your sister or your mum or your auntie or the woman you sit next to at work, you know, or your daughter or your granddaughter, whoever it is going to directly affect everybody in the UK at some point. So the fact that Menopause Mandate have been working to get menopause onto the primary school curriculum, and they've actually managed to do that now, that's so important, because now the generations coming through from now on will have a bit more of an understanding of menopause, and that's actually all we need. We just need more knowledge. Knowledge is power. If everybody understood a little bit more about menopause, instead of being written off as like a crazy, angry, bitter old cat lady, you know, there would be a bit of understanding of like, actually, this person's going through a tough time, be a little bit more empathetic.
No, I agree. And I think also there is still a responsibility to ourselves to, one, educate ourselves, and I'm speaking from guys and women here as well, is that we have to educate ourselves on ourselves, because we if we were in America, for example, who, they pay for all their treatments and all that kind of stuff, we might be a little bit more inclined to actually have a look under the bonnet to see actually what's going on ourselves. So me personally, I do blood work very regularly, so I know, and I can, like we were talking about controlling the controllables, I know if things are out of whack. Being 42 myself, I know that my testosterone doesn't last forever. So, I'm very passionate about the menopause side of things as well, in the drop in testosterone, increase in depression and suicide and anxiety and all that kind of stuff in guys, because we go through the same, albeit not as always as dramatic or symptomatic as what perhaps females do. But guys do go through the same thing. So both parties need to educate each other on each other. And I think if you were able to do that in an elegant way, it would dramatically change. Well, it'd change all sorts of stuff in workplace, in home life, in divorce statistics, all this kind of stuff, because our nerve center or our personality center is really a bunch of chemicals all interacting with one another. And when you take one out, or you elevate one somewhere else that maybe shouldn't be elevated, then the wheels start to come off. But we have to educate ourselves on what we should be looking for. So a GP is a general practitioner, or as I call, because I've got some clients that are GPs, I call them Google practitioners, with respect. But yeah, they're not designed to know all the answers, and nor should they, because they're general. So we have to take our own responsibility to look under our own bonnet and be able to ask better questions in order to seek better solutions.
Agreed.
Cool. That was a fist bump moment, but we can't because we're on Zoom. So circling back to the pageant. So I know that the menopause thing was important to you, but how did you knit the two together? How did you translate that into being, well, actually, Miss Great Britain, for people who don't necessarily know Miss Great Britain or don't know pageant, they just think beauty pageant. So how did you connect all the dots to educate yourself on exactly what this thing was, to know it was the right platform for you to be able to then start to bring this to the forefront?
So the person that obviously introduced me to it was Kirsty, former classic queen. So pretty knowledgeable on the system, and pretty knowledgeable on, competing and the process of trying to win that crown. And very early on, I said to Kirsty, okay, I think I'm going to do this, but before I sign on the dotted line, can we have a call? And can I just literally ask you a million questions? Like, I love a bit of research. I love a spreadsheet. I like to be fully clued up before I do things. That is the way I operate. And we had a call one Sunday afternoon, and the call literally went like this: me opening notebook to the page where I'd written 72 billion questions. And I just got a pen out and went, right. And I asked her every conceivable question you can imagine. How does this work? What's that? What would I have to do? Why, when, how, who, what, where, when? Just absolutely like asked her everything I could think of, got it all off my chest. And at the end of it, I went, yeah, I can see that I can add value here. I can see that what I would campaign about and what I would talk about actually fits. Like, I can see a place for me here, because I just had kind of flushed out everything to do with Miss Great Britain. And we actually talked about menopause on that call. And at that point, it was a bit like, it's a bit cliche, isn't it? Being a classic queen and talking about menopause, because it just did the thing that sort of 40-something women talk about. And we almost like parked it, like, probably that's not the thing. But you know what? When I was a month into Miss Great Britain, and I was seeking media opportunities, so I was contacting the press and I was talking to journalists, it was the thing that they were all really interested in. It was the thing that defined my story. And so it got dialed up because it made sense. And my concerns about it being a bit obvious and cliche, I was wrong, you know, because it's probably the most important issue I could have talked about.
Yeah, for sure. And is that what your year in Rain is going to mainly focus on? Is still, going down that narrative of helping that get out there more? What's your plans now you have actually won, where that's concerned?
So I think one of the biggest products of perimenopause for women is a lack of confidence. Anxiety elevates and confidence diminishes. And women second guess themselves and get all tied up in knots. And so Live for Now, which is what I've sort of branded my campaign as, has really focused on giving women the skills to foster a positive mindset and to boost their self-confidence. Now, that is as applicable to a 21-year-old as it is a 47-year-old. It's about female empowerment and female self-confidence. So a lot of the content that I put out there, any woman could take value from. And I interviewed 6 women that I thought really had interesting stories and embodied female self-confidence. And that was an Instagram live series. And I've already committed to doing a second series during my reign. And actually, I think I've probably already got a third series in me already, because I put a call out to my followers to say, who do you think I should interview? Who would you be fascinated to hear from? Who embodies Live for Now? Who's the poster girl? And I got bombarded with suggestions, some of whom got atted in the comments on my reel and immediately contacted me and said, I'd love to do this.
Cool.
I couldn't believe it. So I've definitely got now a really nice shopping list of people that I can interview and more content that I can create. So that isn't menopause per se, although some of those women are very much menopositivity warriors themselves. It's really more about female energy and positivity and self-confidence.
Yeah, cool. So have you got Davina on the list?
I haven't got Davina on the list. I wouldn't say no to Davina. Let's be honest. If Davina knocked on the door, I wouldn't say no.
I would go big or go home.
Yeah, you cannot message Davina on Instagram. Her inbox is not open.
There's always a way. There's always a way.
You can't doorstep her that way. But my sponsor, Owning Your Menopause, Kate, is a very big meno warrior and knows. So she works with Wellbeing of Women, which is a charity, and it is present at many of the large menopause mandate type events. So there is a route if I want to take it.
Yeah, there's always a route. There's always a way, and I'm pretty sure, Gina, if there's a way, you are the perfect person to find it. I would suggest. So you touched actually there, which is a lovely segue into philanthropy and charity. So I'd love to hear more of your thoughts on what you're involved with and what you've actually previously done, maybe in your former life, and what you want to bring into particularly year's reign as the new Miss Great Britain Classic.
So as a little girl, have really strong memories of doing charity work with my mum. My mum was a really big charity advocate, so she was always involved in a number of different female-led charitable organisations. We always had a lifeboat, very 1980s, a large plastic lifeboat that we went and shook around the town centre. And did you know the first ever lifeboat was in the Isle of Man? Bet you didn't know that. Amazing fact.
Well, that's one of the facts that I now know, along with it being the Bee Gees' original home,
Yes.
which you told me at the Alex's Wish Ball on Saturday. I still need to query. I'm just not sure about that.
So on the Bee Gees, let me tell you this. So the Bee Gees, the Gibb brothers, lived in Onken in the Isle of Man, where my mum and my uncle Ian grew up. They used to play with them. They used to climb trees with them. And my uncle fell out of a tree, which he was climbing with the Gibb brothers, and cracked his head open. So fact. They then emigrated to Australia when they were little.
Awesome.
Fact. They started out in the Isle of Man.
Did they run to the nearest house and say he's fallen out of a tree but he's staying alive?
They should have done.
The
They
dad,
should have done.
the dad
This
joke.
is only one of the times he cracked his head open. He cracked his head open, I think, a further 2 times. He slid down a hill on a tea tray on one occasion and went off the edge of a cliff. He was quite an accident-prone child. My
Did he
uncle
suffer
Ian.
with a night fever? No,
He should have
I'm
done.
gonna leave it there. I can't give it anymore. I can't. Otherwise, we'll get cancelled or something.
So the
Anyway,
first
back to the
lifeboat,
lifeboat. Yeah.
yeah, was also launched in the Isle of Man. So my mum is from the Isle of Man, and my dad is also from the Isle of Man. So I am big for Manx culture. All my aunties and uncles and cousins are over in the Isle of Man. We had a lovely Manx lady competing this year, Ella, in the Ms division. And I've also come across another girl in pageantry, Joanna Martin Edge, who's from the Isle of Man, which has been really lovely.
Wonderful.
So
I
yeah,
think
my
we should
mum,
have a regional heat over on the Isle of Man. I think that would be
there used to be a Miss Isle of Man competition. I've spoken to Sally Ann about it, but it hasn't happened for a long time.
well, you never know.
So yeah, my mum was always out shaking a tin. She always did the poppy appeal as well. So I was always brought up that, you know, you give your time and your energy to charities. That's what you do. My godmother, who's a really significant figure in my life as well, was a prolific fundraiser. Sadly, she lost her daughter when her daughter was, I think, about 2 years old to quite a rare childhood illness. And she raised an enormous sum of money in the early 80s, and they built a whole ward at our local hospital in her daughter's name. And she then, in later life, founded a charity called ICPV, which is Independent Cancer Patients' Voice, because she had been a cancer patient, had a double mastectomy, and recognised that she needed to advocate for patient voice. So if you're undergoing treatment for cancer, are the doctors and the nurses listening to what you need and what you think and what you want? And that's what her charity advocates for. So these are the sort of people around me. So I've always felt compelled to do charitable work. In fact, my big sister has founded a charity since her husband passed away in 2020. She has founded a charity in his name, the Andy Taylor Foundation. So I think one of the things I'll probably do throughout my reign is do some kind of work with the Andy Taylor Foundation, because my brother-in-law Andy was a phenomenal human.
Oh, cool. That's ace. And apart from those kind of philanthropic charity events, what have you got planned this year with your reign? Have you got much in the diary yet? Do you know where you obviously, I know you're going to the which we're really jealous that we're missing actually this year, which is the New Year's Day parade. Are you looking forward to that one?
I am. I'm looking forward to the New Year's Day parade. I'm praying that it's not going to rain, because last year it looked like a clear, dry, bright day.
Yeah, it was cold, but it was great.
The chances of 2 in a row are slim, aren't they? So I'm praying that it's not going to.
Well, London usually is. It's not generally too bad. It's cold, but generally bright. I think you're going to be absolutely fine. I mean, we'll be very hot because we'll be on a beach, but I'm sure it'll be. It's a great day. It really is a fantastic day, and a lot of effort goes into it. So it'd be interesting to see actually what you do this year. I think last year they were the girls were in the back of the minis, like sat on the sort of back bit of convertible minis, which was really cool. And we got to see that. So I'm excited for you to go and experience that one. Is there anything else that's on your goals list for this year?
So I think we're all going, the Queens are going to Supranational in February, which still for me, going to a pageant is very new and exciting experience. The first pageant I ever attended was Miss London, where I was the host. So that was completely bonkers. I'd never even been to a pageant. I found myself hosting a pageant. But so yeah, it's going to be interesting to see a different system. How does that work? Is it different? Is it similar? We're going to the Pageant Expo. That's pretty cool. I think we are the opening the runway. So we're going to walk, which is quite cool. Should be fun. What else have we got going on? So we're planning at the moment, Larissa and Maddie and I are planning an event, probably for summer of next year. Cool. Can't tell you anything about that yet, all in the pipeline, but that should be very fun.
Okay, I'll just have a look in the WhatsApp chat and figure it out.
We've got a secret chat. So
I'll ask Maddie because yeah, she's like a leaking ship. She'll yeah. Sorry, carry on. And is that? Can you say what that's in aid of for or?
It's all really very embryonic at the moment, so I think I'll just keep stim on that.
Okay, cool. No worries. Anything?
What else have I got? I had my planner out. I literally had like a month by month. Well, in the immediate future, on Sunday in a few days' time, we're going to do our Queen's shoot with Charlotte Clemmy.
Yes,
So
you
that's
are.
mega exciting. Can't wait for that. I've never done a shoot with a crown, so that will be quite exciting.
And
Charlotte's
excellent.
I still find it really difficult to get it on and have it straight and not wear it as a necklace, because obviously on the night it fell around my head, you know, down here, because my head's so tiny. So there's a lot of pins in here holding it on.
Brilliant. Actual fun fact, actually, I don't know whether anybody's got this, but for Charlotte as well, she's actually joining the Miss Great Britain media team as of so in for the finals next year. She'll be shooting alongside our media crew, Chris and James, so that'll be cool. That'll be really good. Wow. Yes, actually more so actually at the request of Chris and James. They were really impressed with her and made the invite to get involved, so we're excited about that, having another fantastic human behind the camera, which is fantastic, and that's an exclusive. You can have that as an exclusive. So talk to me a little bit about the things that you would say to people who were in your at your place in time when you were looking at Miss Great Britain, either particularly where the classic, or maybe talk to all divisions, and if there are people that are perhaps listening or stumbled across the podcast and they want to actually get involved in the pageantry, like what has it done for you, or what has it brought to you being involved?
So the whole assumption, or that you know, pageantry must be a bit bitchy, absolutely not. You know, I've met some of the most incredible women. I've made friends for life. Some of the girls the night before the final were incredibly giving with their experience and their knowledge, and like from that perspective, you know, it's a real eye-opener to see how everybody helps and shares and, you know, raises each other up. So emotionally, it's a very supportive environment, which I think is really nice. I have had to be introspective and look at where I needed to be braver and grow and round myself out. And so the work I've done over the last 8-9 months, you know, I do feel I'm a bit of a learning and development junkie. When I was in corporate, I did so many courses, you know, my Myers-Briggs profile and Dale Carnegie, and you name the course, I've been on it. And I love that. And I draw on those a lot with my pageantry stuff. But I still find that I'm learning now, and I'm learning from the girls. You know, people like Edison, who is so young, one of the regional directors, absolutely full of pearls of wisdom. Jazz Cuggy, again, 21, I think, full of pearls of wisdom. You know, it's incredible to speak to these girls and hear their journeys and hear what they've got to say. Maya Wayne, who I made friends with, who's in a different system, but she's a junior queen, royal junior, and I mean, wise beyond her years. And this comes from pageantry, you know, because they've just invested for years in themselves and their self-development, and they just say things to me, and I think, file that one away, that's gold dust.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, to touch on Edison as well, who's actually away currently competing internationally. So if you are listening, Edison, good luck. Hope you smash it, and what have you, give you a shout out for sure. Because yeah, like you say, and the thing, and this is why I'm so impressed with, and why I am in my way passionate about you know, spreading the message through pageantry, and you know, not even just through Miss Great Britain, but it's its own personal development company. That's what it is, because there's I can't see any other hobby, maybe outside of, I suppose, like drama and that kind of thing, that prepares people for being able to present themselves in a way that they can adapt, mold, or what have you, to the situation that they're in, which is essentially pretty scary, you know, because being in front of people, in our case, over 600 people, walking on that runway, and I say it on most podcasts, you know, walking on that runway in sometimes not that much. You know, if you're talking swimwear or what have you, and of course you can pick whatever it is that you want, what you want to wear. But you know, the majority of the girls they were out there and they were, you know, this is me, and it's humbling and it's just fantastic to see, because it's, and generally in heels as well, which is a scary prospect as I can imagine. It's just such an unbelievable platform for people to train themselves in progression. You know, it really is. And did you see that when you were speaking to Kirsty? Did you get that vibe from her?
Yeah, so Kirsty has the dark arts within her, because my area of comfort was going to always be interview and on stage question, because I'm a speaker. You know, I've presented to boards of global companies to get their marketing budget, to get their spend. So for me, that was the least scary part. And doing the media interviews was the least scary part. In a weird way, I quite like live TV because it's terrifying, but adrenaline and fun all at the same time. For me, on stage was absolutely terrifying. Terrifying, because that was not my comfort zone. I'm really clumsy. I always fall over, high heels, you know, or a bad combo. But every girl's different. And there were some girls who were so born to be on the stage, but terrified of being given the mic for the onstage question. So we're all different. But Kirsty's got the dark arts within, because when we were doing our coaching, I was saying to her, oh, well, I think I'll be all right in an interview because, you know, I think I will. She's like, well, go on then, you know, do it to me now, do it. So I did it. And she'd be like, right, it's got some notes for you. And I'd think every single thing she said, she's absolutely right. That's I guess the experience of, you know, competing and coaching and fine-tuning me to be a bit more pageanty and a bit less like I'm presenting to the marketing board. I think when I started, I was a bit more corporate than
dialing down the alpha female edge a little.
Yeah, and fluffing me up a bit more. But you know, every single piece of advice she gave me was bang on, absolutely bang on. And I then practiced. I mean, probably, definitely 300, 400, 500 times. Probably I could possibly have got up to 1,000 times. I had a timer on my phone for 2 minutes, and I had a timer on my phone for 1 minute. And every time I drove anywhere, and bear in mind, I drove Derbyshire and back, Leicester and back, that's 3.5 hours each way. On one occasion, oh, and I drove to Red Carpet Ready, Lincolnshire and back, 3.5 hours. On one occasion, all I did the entire way there, entire way back, was just practice my interview and my on-stage question. So like 7 hours of practice in one journey, just taking on board Kirsty's feedback. You know, I'm absolutely convinced that I wouldn't have won if I hadn't had my coaching with Kirsty.
And that's a skill in itself, being able to take on feedback and, you know, accept that you don't know it all, and be able to take on you know, good quality critique, to be able to then polish what you've already got, because, you know, it's a like I say, a skill in itself, being humble enough to go, okay, so I appreciate you've done this before. And you know, there's a lot to be said for what's, you know, as we know, modeling. I'm not talking like physical model, I'm talking about modeling someone who's got what you've already want, or has got what you want, in order to replicate the outcome.
I've got a really big thing that I'm thinking about a lot at the moment, which is that your thoughts are not you. And that sounds a really weird thing to say, but like, the thoughts that go through your head all the time, because you have an internal monologue all the time, don't you? And they tend to be the things that are going to trip you up. They're the limiting beliefs, the things that ding in your head the whole time. So when I was competing, you know, the things that would be like, oh, you're going to trip over. Well, if you think you're going to trip over, you're going to trip over, right? If you positive mental attitude and all that. So I was trying to separate my thoughts from my personality, because my thoughts are not me. And I was trying to observe my thoughts as an outsider, rather than allow my thoughts to trigger the chemical reaction in my body that becomes a feeling.
Mhm.
Do you understand what I mean? Because I think
100%.
feelings are like a biochemical reaction to thoughts. You
Mhm.
think it, then your body reacts to it, either stress, excitement, whatever, and then that feeling becomes real. Then that state is what you're going to produce. And so I was doing a lot of work in the run up to the final, trying to separate. That's just a thought. Look upon it as if it's like a ornament on the mantelpiece. View it, observe it, but don't act upon it. Don't turn it into a reality by reacting to it.
Mm.
Does that sound really weird and
No, not
bonkers?
at all.
Do you
'Cause I
understand
do
what I
something
mean?
very similar. I do something very similar in that I look upon it in a similar way, but it's almost lawyer-like. So I look at it as like, what would a jury say to this? So actually looking for evidence to the tune of whatever. So it might be negative belief about something. You're
Yeah.
terrible at being podcasting or whatever, and then it's, well, hang on a minute. Well, so let's have a look at what the evidence to support this fact.
Mhm.
So is there evidence? Is it fact? Is it hearsay? Is it just my own opinion? Or is it
Mhm.
actual, is it actual fact?
Yeah.
And peeling back the onion, as it were. And I'm quite like that in everyday life anyway. So if something happens, I'm very much okay. So let's just take half a step back here and look at the evidence. So is there solid evidence to support what is causing that challenge, issue, or whatever? And if not, then it's in the non-controllable pile,
Mm.
and off you go. But yeah, unfortunately, we are still however many million years old, in that you see scary dinosaur, tiger, saber-toothed tiger, what have you,
Yeah.
you'll still get the same response, which is someone cutting you off in traffic. You'll still get delivered the same dump of adrenaline, which
Mm.
then is whatever your brain decides to do with that is where that plays out. So
Yeah.
catching the two in between is a skill also, for sure.
Mm.
Right, Gina, I've absolutely loved that conversation. Is there anything that I haven't asked you, or something that you want to speak to before we wrap up and tell people where they can find you?
I think if anyone is watching this and, like me, is a complete pageant newbie and is thinking, what on earth is all this about? Why would I do it? I think absolutely take the risk, but be prepared to do the work. If you want to do it and be successful, it does take a lot of introspective work and then practice. I say to my children all the time, practice doesn't make perfect. I don't believe in that expression. I think practice makes improvement. And if you can just improve a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, eventually you get to where you need to be. So just a load of regular practice, whether that be on the walking. I walked up and down my room downstairs so many times I can't tell you. I still wasn't brilliant at it, but I was a damn sight better than when I started. Um, or whether that be on your speaking, whatever floats your boat. But I think take the risk, but go into it with your eyes open that you got to put the work in.
Yeah, and
And
also, you're quite an anomaly in that not everybody wins like the first time. I suppose you look at Maddie. I think it was her fifth attempt, maybe I think it was her fifth attempt. Um,
yes,
it's very rare that you'll walk in, because I guess of the journey of what the other girls have been doing, because there's girls that come back year in year that are working on that. Maybe they've got a long-term game of, I'm going to do this within 5 years, but I'm going to show up every year and just get that little bit better each time. So then it's one of those, it didn't happen on the night because it was chance. It happened on the night because of the backstory of what was put in place in the run up to actually winning. So if you are coming to, well, I suppose any pageant really, and you're doing it for the first time, it really is go in and have fun and lean into it and see whether this is something that you want to progress within. I think of course you should always, if you're coming into, just my own view, if you're coming into a competition, then of course coming in to win. But that's not everybody's outcome, where a pageant, even though it is a competition, is concerned. It's coming in it to become better than you were walking through the door in the first place.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head there. I don't think pageantry, my first impression of pageantry, I don't think it is about the win. I think it's about the journey and what you learn on the way. that's what I have felt from all the women that I've met. The amazing wisdom that I've absorbed from them is it's the improvement. You know, they're only competing with themselves,
Mhm.
and the satisfaction that they gain from turning up and becoming a better version of themselves is the prize for them.
And of course, there's nothing wrong with showing up to win, because I think if you show up to win, then you're almost flexing that you're flexing that muscle that's only going to serve you, I suppose, other than if you're putting pressure on yourself to win. Showing up to win and putting pressure on yourself to win are two completely different things. But holding yourself as if you are coming to win, I think can only really serve you within the competitions, for sure.
I think taking a 10 and 11-year-old with you and putting them in the front row is enough pressure. You don't need to put pressure on yourself. I think if I hadn't won, I would have had two very sad little babies. But yeah, we were lucky there.
But you did, and and that was that.
Yeah, I could see them. They were just close enough to the front that I could see them. Beyond their table, everything just went black because you know how the size of the room. And so just at the corner of my eye, I could see them when I was walking, which was great, but also made me quite nervous.
Well, hey, look, if you can't do it in front of your family, then who can you do it in front of?
That is true.
Gina, where can people find you if they want to find out more about what you stand for, all of your social media? Where can they get involved in your lives? Did you decide whether you're going to go down the podcast route, or is that still to be confirmed?
So that's the TBC. So if I do my second series of Live for Now, it will be January launch, because my first guest, who is amazing, can't do it till January. So she's going to lead the timing. It will either be an Insta live, and my Insta handle is Gina_Broadhurst, or it will morph into a full podcast. And if it does, I'll post all about that on my page on Instagram anyway. So go to the Instagram page. You can find me on Facebook as well, and my profiles are linked. So I would say hit Instagram, and then everything else will become apparent.
Ace. And if you really can't find it, come to the official Miss Great Britain Instagram page, and she'll be tagged all over the place in there, and you'll find her from there. Gina, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And guys, this has been season 1, episode 8, with the lovely reigning Miss Great Britain Classic, Gina Broadhurst.